Hey, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to episode 2 of the Trailblazer. This time we're working on underside and steering and suspension and brakes, and we got a lot to do. So let's not waste any time. Let's get after it. Right now, I'm just getting an audit of what we've got. It rides pretty floaty, so I do think there's some suspension issues, maybe sway bar. It's got a clunky sound in the back when you rock it, so I'm guessing a sway bar link is loose or broken, or at least the bushings are bad. So just got the wheel off, and this car sat for a long time, so there's some rust here, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's all that bad. That'll clean up. This though, I'm not a big, generally there are people who are, if you do pads, do rotors. And I'm not one of those people. I know if you take it to a shop, they'll make you do the rotors every time. It does increase the cost quite a bit. So if they're smooth, then I don't care how rusted they are. I don't care how surface rust on it. If these are smooth, there's no holes, there's no pits, I'm not replacing these. They're just too expensive. However, in this case, it's hard to see here, but it is got quite a bit of ridging to it. I'm probably gonna replace these. Like, I'll cut corners on my own car, but I'm not cutting corners on my little girl's car, so I'm probably gonna replace these. So new pads and rotors in the front at least. Let's see what else we got around here. Tire doesn't look too bad. And that's not ideal. So the sway bar is not connected at all. There's the other end of the connection. That's fun. Goes right down in here. Looks like that nut just fell off. Goes into that. The hole right here. It doesn't seem to want to move. Probably just gonna replace the sway bar links. And I am generally of the opinion, if you do something like this on one side, you should do it on the other. Because generally when something in suspension wears out, because unless there's a weird anomaly, the car wears pretty evenly. So if brakes are bad on one side, they're gonna be bad on the other. If rotors are bad on one side, they're gonna be bad on the other, because the length of time and wear is the same. So it's kind of like light bulbs. You replace a headlight bulb, you should replace the other headlight bulb, because it's probably gonna blow here pretty soon and you already got everything open. That's kind of how this is. I'm gonna have that other wheel off doing the brakes. So if it's even close to bad, I'll just buy 2 of these and replace it. Otherwise, I'll end up back in here a month from now replacing that one when it does eventually go bad. And then get these brake pads off, and we'll take a look what those look like. These come off fairly easily, at least normally they do. There's a bolt here and a bolt here, and the caliper just comes off. Tip: when you're taking calipers off, and you're loosening bolts, make sure you're paying attention to the direction the bolt's loosening and do the right one, because otherwise you end up, so they're loosening this way, going backwards. So if you do this one first and then you start trying to loosen this one, this is just gonna flop around as you're trying to wrench on this bolt and be in the way. So do the top one first. This is the driver's side. On the passenger side, it'd be the opposite. So you wanna wrench so that the caliper pushes towards the wheel. That'll help you break these loose. They're usually, though, they're not super snug. At least they shouldn't be. Sometimes people over tighten these, though. We'll see how good I am. I'm gonna guess 13 millimeter. Right. That's interesting. Bottom is not a 13 millimeter. I've not done a brakes on every single car in existence, but I've never had one where the 2 bolts were different sizes. It makes me wonder. You want to do the top one first. So when you wrench this one up, it pushes the caliper towards the wheel. You can see it just breaks loose. And sometimes, depending on the car, some of these they pull all the way out, and some of them they just come loose. That one comes all the way out. There's a little boot in here. Usually one you have to get through, but there it is. See how that boot comes loose there? So when you put it back in, you gotta finagle to get back in that hole, but Well, that's the nut there. Okay, so you don't have to go back in the hole. That just allows this to flex. Anyway, take that back out. Now, it's not a 13. Not even close. I'm gonna say 15. It is not a 15. It's still much bigger. It was a 17. That looks like a store-bought bolt. Not a factory bolt. It worked though. It does have the same thread. Another one of those things that's creative about this car. So these should pull out. Sometimes it takes a little bit of influence, especially when they're old and rusty. Tuck that there so it doesn't fall and smash your fingers. Let's get a pad out. Well, you know, the pads really aren't too bad. The rotors, the pads have a decent amount of pad left on them. They're not hitting the little squeaker bar yet, but they have the same grooves. You can see in the light, you see the grooves in it. Those are the same grooves as the rotor. So somebody did have a bad rotor and didn't change the pads, but didn't want to save money to change the rotor. So we're gonna go ahead and change them both. I don't have those yet. I'll have to go pick those up. What's the backside one look like? Yeah, about the same, which is also a good sign. That means the alignment balance is pretty good. Sometimes you'll see these where they'll wear funny, like the one inside pad will be worn more than the outside pad, or it'll be worn at an angle, and that usually means they're off camber here somewhere. So that bodes well. That's good news. Good even wear. So we'll get this caliper bracket off. Is that another 17? No, those are usually 19. And they're pretty tight, so I might need the impact for that. And then, so this bracket comes off, and then these are just loose. This should just slide off. So we got sway bar, link, pads, and rotors so far. That's the front. Well, at least front driver's side. We'll move over to the other side and see what we got. Oh, we gotta get this bracket off. All right. So it was an 18, not a 19. I was wrong again. I got the impact in here. I have a little short stubby one, but the impact back some hits this, so I can't get all the way out. I got loose. This one though, there's nowhere near enough room. I got the brake line here. So there's nowhere near enough room to get that in here. So we're gonna try to see if we can do it by hand. Nope. All right, we'll get this one out. Nope, we'll leave that one in because we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna end up flipping this bracket up. Get a little more leverage. It's not quite enough room here for the breaker bar, but might be able to get this in here. Kind of get in my leg here. There we go. Pretty cut. These do add some costs. They're not stupid expensive. You can get pretty inexpensive versions of these. You know, you can pay a lot of money for good rotors, but we'll probably go the cheaper route. So I left this part out before. These have this little trim ring on them, trim bracket. You gotta usually get a screwdriver or your on the road. The jack system with crowbar that comes with this has a little screwdriver end like that on it. You just gotta get enough of it loose to get it out. Okay, so let's take a peek at the sway bar link here first, since we know we've been dealing with that. Yeah, see, that's loose. In this case, I think again, it's just not tightened enough. All right, well, I don't trust that anymore either. And the boot at the bottom is broken, so it's gonna have no grease in it anymore. That's loose down there, so that's bad. So Yep, we'll do the pair. Anything else in here? That is not normal. That's wild. So yeah, that is dangerous. That's the whole upper control arm. Got some kind of goo. I have no idea what is going on up there. It's like windshield glue. Let me just pretend I didn't see that. Yep. So I gotta get this wheel well out of here. Not too bad, it's usually just pins. Maybe a screw or two. There's a small bolt down here. So I can get some clearance. And same thing with the brakes. This rotor isn't as bad, but since I'm doing that side, I'm gonna do this side that way. The wear is the same. And this caliper comes off the same way, just in reverse. It's on the other side. And you get brakes, you get sets of 4 anyway, so we'll get brakes for this. And since we have it apart, and there's no sense at this point trying to save 20 bucks or 30 bucks on a rotor, so we'll go ahead and get rotors and then figure out what's going on with that bolt up there. That's scary. So these same trim tools that I was using inside for the panels work great for these little clips too. You can use a screwdriver and it will work. It's just kind of a pain. I mean, they're kind of a pain anyway. There's a little more rigidity to them. Pull it out and then pull out the little clip. So you just gotta pop this centerpiece out first and then get underneath the main plate and pop the little pin out. These will pop all the way out. It's not a big deal if they do. They go right back in. There you go. Just come right out. Feels like there's something back here holding this together. Yep, there's one right there. All right, wheel well's out. We got a little more space to see. Not a lot though. Thought we'd get some more room in here. At least got enough I can get behind it with something. Suspension's unloaded, so there's no way to the car to compress it. So it's gonna wanna push all the way down. And this connects up to this upper control arm. And so we need to probably put a jack under here just to load this up a little bit. All right, I was able to drive it in. It was pretty loose. So I didn't need to load the suspension up. Wanted to give it a shot. It was obnoxiously loud in here, so I just hit it with the impact wrench. So I drove right in. So it's in there good and tight now. Probably over torqued. Someday I'll have to replace this and I'll wish I hadn't done that, but probably not. So brakes, rotors, sway bar links for the front. I was having trouble getting those caliper bolts off before. And I said I couldn't fit the impact in. And forgetting that I'm working on the front. Told you, sometimes I'm kind of an idiot. So on the front, the wheels turn. So you can turn that wheel, you get yourself all the clearance you need. So I hit this with an impact here. It started to come out, but then it started to spin, so I had to hold this with a wrench. So just gotta hold it still so it doesn't spin. It'll come out. So we'll do the same on this one. This one's a little harder to get to. There we go. That has seen better days. That's way, that should be really hard to move. It's just way too easy to move. So we replace them, this whole thing. So the new one, all right, so we got the sway bar link on. It was oddly bigger, like the bolts were bigger. It was a 21 millimeter and a 19 millimeter wrench on the inside, which I don't have, but 19 millimeter and 3/4 are basically the same, so that worked. So that's in. Shiny. These are heavy. They're hard to do one-handed. Turn them out. Then we'll get the caliper, or the caliper bracket back on. That'll hold this on from falling off. And then we got to do is we got to compress this piston, or two piston. These are two piston brakes here. A small car often can do it, like I did my son's Focus, and I just pushed him with my thumbs. It was pretty small. I'm not being able to do it with this one. They do make a kit, a brake caliper kit. You can get it on Amazon, but you can rent them from your local, or borrow, rent from your local auto parts store, AutoZone, Advance. They do a tool rental, pay for the tool, but then you take it back, you get all your money back. So you basically get it for free. You just gotta basically put a deposit down on a rental. But anyway, so what I'm gonna do is try to see if I can clamp on this. I do have an old clamp. It's actually a vise, bench vise that's not connected to a vise. So it's a bit of a heavy beast. But I don't have one of those brake kits in the holiday and the auto parts store is closed. I'm hoping to get this done today. So hopefully that'll get this compressed. If not, then tomorrow I'll be done for the night, and tomorrow I'll go back and get the compressor tool and compress these back. They'll end up almost flush here, if not actually flush. These are self-adjusting, so as the pads wear, this piston comes out and keeps pressure, constant pressure on the pads. So as the pads wear, it has to keep coming out. So it never goes all the way back in when you push the brake pedal. And as the pads wear, it goes out, 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 out. Well, the new pads are thick, so it needs to go back to where it started so I can get the new pads in. And that's, so anyway, that's how why you gotta compress these. So my diabolical plan of trying to get these calipers compressed didn't work. I tried my old bench vise that's disconnected from the bench and at a funny angle, and it probably would have been funny to have on film, but I didn't film it. It didn't work though. So I did go to the store this morning. This is Black Friday. Good day to go to the store. And it's a brake kit. It's $100, $114 I think it was, to reserve, but you get all that back when you take it back. Adapters here for different things. Some have prongs. So some have different variations of, like you have to rotate the caliper back. At old Grand Prix that you had to rotate, and it had these little, probably like that one, had these little dots, and then you have this tool that hooks into these and those holes. So every one of them have those two holes. Those two holes are for those little prongs. And then they have little prongs on them that connect into the caliper grooves and rotate them back. And this one is a nice kit. It's got a pipe bender if you need to add brake, you need to change brake lines, a bunch of different torques and Allen heads for getting the caliper bolts off. These were normal. Some of them have a Torx or a Star, whatever, or a Allen head. So it's a nice complete kit. You can buy these kits on Amazon. They don't be this complete, but you probably don't need, unless you're doing like every single car known to man. You can buy a kit that does most cars and it fits the cars you have. And they're like $20-30. They're not super expensive. In fact, I have one on order, but it just isn't going to be here till later tonight, and I'm trying to get this going. And since this was free and I was already out, I decided to go get one. I've borrowed this tool probably 20 times. It's been handy that it's free. This one's different. How you do this is you won't normally have to do this unless you have multi-piston brakes like this one, but normally this would be your caliper. You'd have one groove here. So you use an old pad as your base to push on. So if you crack it, it breaks, whatever, you don't care. This plate goes in the back, and as you turn this, it rotates that out and pushes on it. And actually, I mean, it's funny, it moves quite easily, even though I can do it one-handed, even though I couldn't push that in with my thumbs. Usually, sometimes I can just push those in with my thumbs. So you kind of have to go a little bit on one side, loosen it up, move it over to the other side. Come on, get in there. Tighten it back up again. And just kind of work them back. If you have a single piston, you just push it till it goes flush, and you'll feel it. It won't turn anymore. This is now, that's flush. It makes pretty short work. Like, this is 30 seconds worth of work here. And put the new pads in. Nothing special about the pads. I just tried to get some mid-grade. I'm not trying to spend a ton of money, but I don't want to get super noisy, dirty pads either. So you get all 4. So you get each side. So a couple of these little clips you clip on, a little bag of them, and they clip onto the ends of the pads like a little squealer tab. So your brakes get low to a certain point. This will start rubbing against that, and it'll squeal really loud. It'll tell you that it's time to change your brake pads. But that way, before you ruin your rotor by running this pad all the way down and getting to this metal back plate, when that metal rubs against your rotor, it will grind. So these go into the bracket already on the, you don't have to put, they give you feelers for every one of them. You don't have to put them all on. I don't know why they give you, usually I only put 1 on, but I did go ahead just for sake of demonstration, put 2 on. And sometimes they come already on there. You don't have to put them on. So they just fit in the grooves that are already on here. Oops. This plate fell off. Little spring plate here. There. Just have to keep them seated in there. So there's little tabs that just go in these grooves right here. So flush against your rotor, and then if you have this caliper pushed all the way back in, this should just slide over. If it doesn't, you don't have the pistons put back in far enough. You gotta keep at it. I remember this one had the weird sized bolt in it, and you just tighten those all the way down. Those don't have to be torqued real tight, so don't hit them with a impact driver. Just do them with a hand ratchet, and just push them till you can't move them anymore, and they're good. And give it a good snug. Don't just like hand tighten them. Do it with a wrench, but you don't have to do it with a torque wrench or you can do it with a torque wrench, and you can look up what the torque specs are. That's really just so that you make sure it's torqued enough and you don't over torque them. But most of us are not strong enough to over torque these bolts by hand. You will over torque, you'll snap them right off if you do it with an impact wrench. So just do them by hand with a ratchet and just get it as tight as you can get it and call it good. So we're over on the passenger side here. So you put that pad in there, thread that out so it'll fit. You start threading it back. And it will initially be a little hard. It might take 2 hands. You don't want to do it too, I don't anyway like to do it too much on one side before I flip to the other. So I kind of just ease them in together. I don't know if it really makes that big a difference. You don't want them to be too different. Even though it takes a little extra time, you just got the little bit of hassle here of rotating the tool from one side to the other. I do it a little bit at a time. You can do this, you don't need a tool like this necessarily. You can do this with like a big C-clamp, like a typical, you can get at a hardware store. And do the same thing, you clamp on this side. So if your back side, this caliper is actually nice that way because it's good and flat. And you can put the clamp like this on the pad and you just crank it. The only reason I don't like those, one, about half the time I've done these, the back of the caliper is rounded, and that C-clamp wants to walk off the back of the caliper. And the other one is those C-clamps have, you know, the handle for the C, where this is a bar. And so you got that bar in your fingers. Now that can be really, like this, kind of a little more ergonomic, and this makes it a lot easier. A little easier on your hands. the advantage of that, especially if it's a bigger clamp and you've got a long bar, if you're having a hard time getting that turn, you can put a small piece of pipe on there and get some leverage. I've done that, and then I've bent that bar right over. So, you know, take the good with the bad there, I guess. A lot of different ways to do this. Get creative with it if you have to. Point is, you just need to get that piston pushed all the way back in. However you gotta do it, right? Just get it done. But these tools make it so much easier. And if you live anywhere in town, in a town that has one of these, you know, big box auto parts stores, they do these tools for free. That's always what I recommend for people, especially if you don't do this very often. If you're just doing this at home with your car, and you got 1 or 2 cars you're dealing with, then you just get that done. You don't have to fart around with this all the time. One thing you always want to check on these two is make sure that your connecting pins here, your bolt pins, are good and loose. Make sure they're greased up a little bit, but they should flex. This one moves just fine. This one doesn't move at all. I try to take this rubber boot out, and you can't really, I don't know if you really see in there very well, but it's just fused, and that caused that pad to this whole thing, the caliper to sit kind of cockeyed in here, and it wore the pad fun. I just took it for a quick test drive, and it was making all kinds of noise. It was smoking. It was not good. And then your compressor caliper. Bring that back down. Pardon my obnoxious dog. So just kind of get those tight by hand, and then just do it with a wrench. Don't do it with an impact. It's a 13 millimeter. There we go. That's it. There's not much to it. Again, you want this to be able to move in here. So as this squeezes, and the pads wear, and it self-adjusts, those cylinders are going to keep pushing out and out and out and out and out and out. You want this to be able to move with it. It was bound up at a weird angle before, and that's why it was wearing so funny. So that should even out the wear. To get those all tightened up, we're good and snug. So new sway bar links, new brakes, got the rear up in the air, got the back, got the driver's side tire off. Rotors themselves, you know, they look like, visually they look like they're bad, but actually if you feel them, they're pretty smooth. There's one groove, you can see it on the camera, but it's right there. Yeah, it's not too deep. I can get it with my fingernail, but otherwise it's pretty smooth. It just looks, it sat for a long time, and it just hasn't ground all the rust and stuff off. So it's just surface rust. It's really not that bad. They look worse than they really are. There's actually a fair amount of pad left. There's that little squealer bar. It's this little tab right here, and it's about, there you go, you can see it there, right? That's on the edge of the pad. It's still quite a bit of distance from there to the rotor, and the back is about the same. So they're wearing fairly evenly. So I'm gonna leave them for now, but you can hear that. It wiggles a lot. You can hear it when you shake the car. If you wobble the car back and forth and hear a clunking sound, it's almost always sway bar. Just about shot. I mean, there's nothing, it's dry rotted, there's nothing left. So the top is just as bad. When you can peel the rubber off with your fingers, that's not good. So I was underneath, and I don't know the wheel off on this side, but I was underneath there. I can probably get underneath and show you. And the other side was not as wobbly, but still not great. So the other side, it isn't quite as rattly, but it rattles. So sway bar links in the rear too. I assume these brakes will be okay, but I'll check it when I get this tire off to change this sway bar link. So I think we're good to go for everything else back here. Nothing else is making noise. So I'm working on the sway bar links for the back. They have this little Allen head in the front on the nose of it. So you end up going to put an Allen wrench in here, or an Allen bit, or some, you know. But you don't want to be torquing on this too hard, because at least in this case, this was really rusty. And I did it on the other side, and it stripped out. So I put an Allen wrench in here, and then put a regular box end wrench. So that way you can have it, I'll show you a new one. You can have it on the nut. Oh, for the love of Pete. And then the Allen wrench goes through the middle. So one side of these came out all right. The other side did not. I got a few turns, and then that hole just stripped right out. And I could not get the Allen wrench in there, so I had to cut that one off. So once you get a little bit of room in there, you can see where I nicked the bar a little bit. Just get a grinder with a cutting wheel. So now the new one just goes in, and you can hold that with an actual, like, legit wrench, and it's a lot more stable. If somebody has a recommendation for gloves that work, I'm all for it. This is my second box of gloves. The one I got from Home Depot was their heavy duty ones. These are from Amazon, and this was their heavy duty ones. Those pictures of guys working on the engines, and they're terrible. It's just like, I got big hands. I went through the whole measurement thing, like they said, like you measure your hand across, and I even went up a size, like I measured, and I went up about 1/4 of an inch. And they're still too small, or at least they're still breaking open. And it's always right here. So I don't know. I used to get some from, I think it's only in the Midwest, called Menards. And those are great. And they were like diamond plated kind of on the grip, so on the fingers, so you had a little bit of grip to them. I don't know, they're really good, and I can't find them anywhere else. And I may have to just buy them from Menards and have them shipped to me. When you're putting these lugs on, you don't want to over torque them. You can over torque them, and that would be bad. The rears, when I tried to take them off, were over torqued and didn't want to come off. It still is faster to do it this way, but my gun has a torque setting on it, so I just set it to the lowest one just to get them snug. Do them in a star pattern. With it up in the air, it spins freely. So that's not, I can't tighten it by hand, but I would do it by hand. Around, give it another snug up. They're probably not torqued enough here, but I'll torque them by hand when we get the wheel on the ground. All right, so the test drive went well. This does still pull, not pull, but the steering wheel's a little off to the left. And I probably can't get it right. So alignment's next. So right now, we're back. I always want to snug these up. Make sure, I said before, when I put those on with the impact, I didn't put them on real super tight on purpose. So you want to make sure you come back and make sure they're all tight. And just so you feel them tighten. You don't have to be super torquey with it. As you can torque them too much. And then put our caps back on. They have a little alignment tool. Shows you where the valve stem is, which is here. And then that lines this little notch with a little notch here. And obviously you want your spokes to line up. Your fake spokes, for whatever it's worth with those wheels. We'll go around and do all the other three. Snug them up, pop the caps back on, And then we'll get the alignment sketch. We're gonna have to get tires too. I'll probably do it from the same place. And should be good to go. All right, we're back from the test drive. Everything's buttoned up, looks good. Let's send her on her way. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time here at Rhino's Garage.